So, if you guys don't know, new Forbidden limited list dropped for Master Duel exclusively just last night, I believe. We're gonna go for all the Forbidden cards first. The first thing on the list here is number 86 Heroic Champion Rongo Miniad, right? So Rongo Miniad, if you're not familiar with him, he's not a super oppressive card. The reason being, it's really hard to make him. But when you do make him, he is absurdly oppressive, right? So essentially what you need to do is you play some Wombo combo deck where you're able to make Rongo Miniad with a bunch of material. Rongo Miniad at the end of every turn will detach one material from himself, but he won't detach any materials if you play this card, Salesman. And Salesman, you know, for all intents and purposes, basically what it says is that this card cannot activate their effects. So if Rongo Miniad never, you know, detaches a material which is on activation, right? You call Rongo Miniad on the Salesman, then he will never detach. And the more he detaches, the weaker he gets, because when you do make him with 5 materials, right? Or let's say just even 4, your opponent cannot normal summon or special summon. He's unaffected by other card effects. He gains 1500 attack and defense, so he's 3k, 3k, and he cannot be destroyed by battle. So he's like an immovable wall. He's an absolutely immovable wall. You can't even kaiju him because of the 4th clause. Your opponent cannot normal summon or special summon monsters. So yeah, you can set. There's not really a lot of ways to play around him. He basically stalls the game indefinitely, and the only way you could really win is by deck out. And it's just a matter of who has more cards by then, right? And they probably play like the Shizu Shufflers or whatever, right? So it's really just, it's really, really toxic. It's really annoying. And it's more toxic in, like, it's more toxic than most Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Yeah, cards that will prompt the player to trash Rongo Miniad or get rid of him in some way will be able to do it. Herald of the Abyss being one out to Rongo Miniad, right? But hardly anyone plays this card, but it is cool. It is cool. This one just says declare one monster type and attribute, and they have to trash one. Xyz Encore 2. There are a lot of outs to Rongo Miniad. In Yu-Gi-Oh, there are outs to everything. The problem is, or the question is, do you play those outs? And the answer is likely no, right? So Rongo Miniad being banned, I think it's a good thing. It is a toxic card. It's not good for the game, just objectively. I feel like it's just more toxic than any other Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and it's not fun. It's just not fun to play against. So Rongo Miniad getting from 3 to 0, that is crazy. If you have 3 Rongo Miniad, hell yeah, that's good refunds. But this has been a long time coming. Rongo Miniad, before Rongo Miniad got banned, one of his support cards were banned. And it was funny because Rongo Miniad's a UR, but his support card's like a rare or an SR rarity. So dismantling that just isn't that great. Okay, moving on. Talk about Agido. This is a Tearlaments hit. Of course, other decks do play Agido, right? Necroface or like some other weird mill deck. But generally speaking, Agido is the strongest in Tearlament. This is a huge hit to Tearlament consistency because Tearlament is all about milling certain cards, and milling Agido lets you mill 5 more cards. And when you mill 5 more cards, you just have that much more of a chance to hit the Tearlament girls on the mill. If you hit the Tearlaments on the mill, then you will get fusions, and when you get fusions, they just pop off. This coming down to 0, it sucks. It sucks for Tearlament players. This is really, 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 really hard. Tearlaments already suffered a big hit because Havness, right? Havness can only mill 3. And when you mill Agido, things can pop off. They can get really going. You have a lot of consistency, but now you have no Agido, right? Now you have no Agido. So now you're only really dependent on Havness mill 3. And there's just been a lot more other hits with regards to Tearlaments that this milling 3 is basically like no one will be scared of it. No one will be scared of Tearlaments milling 3 after this ban list. It just doesn't have any impact at this point. So Agido coming down to 0 is a great hit in terms of like from your perspective of like not playing Tearlaments, because yeah, I think alongside the other hits that we see in this list, I think Tearlaments are dead. Next one on the list is someone I don't really have a lot to talk about. Phantasmal Lord Ultimital Bish Balkan. The idea with Bish Balkan is you pump him to 8,000, 10,000 attack points, and then you trash him for burn damage to your opponent. And it's just not, like, that is unfun. FTKs are not fun. I'm a fan of banning FTKs. FTKs just aren't good for the game, objectively, in my opinion. Block Dragon. This bitch. This card. Block Dragon is finally getting banned. Block Dragon is banned in TCG. I believe it's banned in OCG. This is the only reason why Adamanticators is such a good deck. Because all they need to do is get Block Dragon in the grave. And once he's in the grave, basically you have free reign of doing anything. He can summon himself an unlimited amount of times within a turn. So he always comes out on the board and helps you link summon, he helps you synchro summon, right? And then once he's trashed to do the link summon and synchro summons, he lets you add 3 rock monsters from your deck to your hand. And there are a lot of rock monsters that can special summon themselves from the hand, like Gigantes or any of the Adamanticator monsters. So this card allows Adamanticator, a wombo combo deck, to find so many extenders and also just be so resilient. Even if you do break the combo or you're able to play the game, Block Dragon protects other rock monsters. He's absolutely ridiculous. I'm glad to see him bad. Adamanticator is probably not in a playable state after it. This is a severe hit to their consistency, their combo ability, their ability to extend and recover. It's really, really bad. Next card on the list. Tearlaments Merly. Tearlaments Merly getting hit. It's going from 2 to 0. That is fucking nuts. That is so painful. Because with Tearlaments, right? If you look at Tearlaments, there are 3 monsters. There are 3 monsters that Tearlaments would obviously like to keep and are core to the deck and how it functions, being Shiren, being Havness, and finally Merly. When Tearlaments mill any of these girls, right, they are able to fuse from using the graveyard as material. And so you're basically only able to fuse twice now, right? Because the fusion effect is a hard once per turn. So the only fusion spells you have essentially are Shiren, Havness, and now Merly is entirely gone. This basically means that a Tearlament end board is going to look like they're going to make Kikalos, and then they're going to make Rokalos, and that's it. And that's literally it. And not only that, the consistency hit that banning Merly specifically does is insane. It is absolutely insane because you have to think about what else do you hit. You basically hurt Tearlament's ability to go into Elf. Elf is a great play to protect your Rokalos because it shields whoever she points to. And also, Elf lets you revive Merly on your opponent's turn so that you can mill 3 and play on your opponent's turn, right? You also cut their access to Sprint. Sprint is basically a Link 2 monster using a level 2, and you could use Sprint to dump Merly from the deck in order to fuse, right? It is a huge consistency card. It allows you to play even with very little resources, right? As long as you have Merly, you can normal summon, right? You can go into Sprint and dump Merly from your deck and then fuse and get your plays, right? Is absolutely crippling. It is absolutely crippling to Tearlaments. It hurts their end board. It hurts their ability to play. It makes it so that they only have 2 fusions. It hurts their consistency by limiting their access to Sprint. It is absolutely like the death knell. This probably hurts harder than banning Kikalos. You could basically replace Kikalos with King of the Swamp. You could replace Kikalos with Beast King of the Swamps. There's like a elf card that also acts as a fusion substitute. You could replace Kikalos. Now it's going to be Shadol with the Tearlament engine, pretty much. They're a really hard deck to play at this point. Like, you can play Tearlaments, but they're going to be a really hard deck to play. Because not only did you ban Merly, you banned Agido, right? And you know what? Let's use this as a segue. You also limited Kelbeck. Kelbeck is very functionally similar to Agido in that if you mill Kelbeck, you mill 5 other cards. And you mill 5 other cards, you have a higher chance of hitting your Tearlament or good mills, right? So Kelbeck is getting hit from 2 to 1, which is another huge consistency hit. Kelbeck is very favorable compared to Agido. I'm glad that they allow you to keep at least one Kelbeck, because Kelbeck does have a special function. He does have another function within the hand, which is if your opponent mills a card, he can special summon himself and bounce a monster, which I think is a really cool effect. I think that was really strong, and it's cool. And it's just not going to be very consistent. If he's in the hand, then he's a hand trap. And if he's in your deck, he's a consistency card. But it's coming down to one. And so you can't have both a hand trap and a consistency card. So Kelbeck getting hit hurts. It hurts a lot. Kelbeck is a play typically done on the opponent's turn. The summoning of Kelbeck anyway, and bouncing. It is essentially a hand trap, yeah. It is a very niche hand trap though, right? Because it requires your opponent to also mill cards from their deck, which you would do with Kelbeck, or you would do with Agido, because Agido and Kelbeck mill from both players' decks. Both players have to drop 5 cards, right? So Kelbeck getting hit to 1, Merly getting banned, Agido getting banned. I think Tearlaments are 6 feet under. I think this is really hard to play, and it's basically now limited to a sub-engine. It's basically limited to like a tier 3, if that, if not a rogue deck. Is Merly banned harder than Kikkilos ban? I think so. I think Merly being banned is hard because now you're only limited to 2 fusions. And so it's not like you can make Kikkilos, Rokalos, and another fusion monster, right? It's not even like you can make the Mudrigan to protect Rokalos, or you can make Garura for rank 6 play on the same turn. It's like, there's a lot that cutting one fusion spell off does. It limits the power ceiling of Tearlaments by quite a bit. And also the consistency. Kikkilos was amazing because of the carded search. Merly going away retroactively makes Kikkilos worse. Oh yeah, that's another thing too I didn't even mention. Merly going away means you can't mill 8 feel great. Because the typical play is you make Kikkilos, right? And with Kikkilos, you get to search a Tearlament monster, you search Merly, and with Kikkilos as well, you get to special summon a monster from hand or graveyard. Usually you special summon Merly. And you also send Kikkilos to the grave as well in that same one move. And so what happens is you mill 8, and milling 8 is obviously really good with Tearlaments, right? Because you can hit more Tearlament names, you could fuse more. But now you basically lost the best search target for Kikkilos, right? There are obviously really good search targets. This Tearlament still has a lot of great tools, but the default play for Kikkilos was to search Merly, and losing that hurts a lot. It's a nerf to Kikkilos without killing Kikkilos. Let's move on. Branded Fusion. Maybe Branded and Tearlaments can join forces now in a 40 card deck because they're just kind of half engines at this point, right? They are focused a lot on fusion monsters, and you know, there are still some plays you can do, right? So I think Tearlaments Branded are probably the way to go if you're trying to use any of these archetypes, because Branded Fusion is a core card to Branded Despia. It is a core card to it. If you don't have Ash Blossom for this, they go off, and the fact is now that you only have one. And so it's hard. It's a lot harder for consistency, and it's a lot harder for recoverability by hitting Branded Fusion to 1. So, was it deserved? I guess not really, because Branded Despia isn't like the strongest deck by far, but it is very consistent. It's very, it's had its time. It's had a lot of time now in the sort of semi-spotlight. So, I mean, personally, I don't like playing against Branded Despia. I feel like they recover very easily. I feel like it's hard to deal with their onslaught of like summonings. So I'm a fan of this, but I can recognize that it's petty. Like, I just don't like them. That's all it is. Grasslook Screener is getting hit from 2 to 1. Hell yeah. I hate 60 card Andes. I hate 60 card decks. You always hear me say it whenever I find a 60 card deck, 60 card Andy. I think it's the worst way to build your deck. I think it is just a troll. If they have this card, they pretty much win. If they don't have this card, they pretty much lose. When you do mill 20 cards with the Grasslick Screener, that creates a huge insurmountable advantage, I feel. It's really, really difficult to beat a 60 card deck that is built well, that hits this card. So I'm glad to see it go to 1. It means that they have to play more left arm offerings, and in that sense they have to minus themselves, and they will not be able to hit this card as consistently. It's too swingy, right? It's way too swingy. It's like, did they open grass? They win. Did they not have grass? They lost, right? And I'd rather they just don't exist. Personally, I'd rather they just don't exist, because it's such a huge auto win if they do have it. We are going to be talking now about Sprite Jet. Sprite Jet is getting hit from 2 to 1. That's great because sprites are played a lot now, and this is a hit to their consistency. I feel like sprites right now are getting the Fluwander Reese treatment. The Fluwander Reese treatment being like, they keep suffering little micro hits to their consistency until there is a point where they're just not played as much anymore, right? And so Jet being hit means that there are less opportunities for them to combo off, because Sprite, any of the Sprite names are necessary to kind of get going and be able to rank 2 into Gigantic and summon Blue, summon Jet, get starter, right, and just pop off. This is a hit to their consistency, and this is one of their more core cards, because Jet, when Jet is summoned, Jet is able to special summon and search starter, which gets them going. So I like this hit. I think it's good. Swap Frog is also getting hit from 2 to 1. Not too much to say other than it's a Sprite consistency hit. Swap Frog is one of their best starters. It's also the card that notoriously allows Sprite players to bounce Max C into their hand. They don't really get to do it that often, to be fair. They would really have to pop off in order for that to work. But that being said, it's still a nerf to their starting hand consistency. And Sprite's strength is in turn 1, being able to pop off and make a really crazy board. So them getting hit to their turn 1 opening hand consistency in the form of Swap Frog coming down to 1, Jet coming down to 1, is a good hit to their overall power level, their consistency, how often you're going to see them on ranked, honestly. So yeah. They're trying to do a lot of like fine tuning. They're trying to do a lot of fine-tuning of balance, and they just do little micro hits here, and there for each archetype, right? Branded Fusion coming down to 1. Like, admittedly, this doesn't really do too much, right? It just hits their opening hand consistency, right? And a little bit of their recoverability. It makes them a little vulnerable to cards that can shuffle them or banish them, right? So this is the same thing with sprites. So I'm a fan of these sort of micro hits, honestly. I'm not really a big fan of Tearlaments getting demolished. I think Tearlaments absolutely got destroyed from this ban list. But as far as everything else goes, I mean, you could still play Sprite. They're just not going to be as consistent. Let's move on. Cards to be semi-limited. There's not going to be a lot to talk about with these cards, honestly. Blaster is an old card. It was staple in the Dragon Ruler Spellbooks format. That's, you know, more than a decade ago at this point. It's a free level 7 summon, essentially. With the right deck, it's a free level 7 summon, right? It's a free dragon summon, and it does have like one of the better hand effects of the other dragon rulers, right? You can discard this card in a fire monster, target one card on the field, destroy that target. But at the same time, I don't know what's going to pop off with this. But it's nice. It's nice that they're letting these cards come out more and, like, I don't know, just releasing them slowly. This might be the reason why Blaster got unhit, is because next V-Jump promo, I guess they are going to have Blaze, the Supreme Ruler of Dragons. I guess it's a retrain of it, which is cool. Dragon Ruler coming back. If that's the case, if it's a V-Jump promo, there's a high chance that this card can come pretty quickly to Master Duel. Why do I say that? It's because Sky Striker Azalea. Azalea was released in TCG in English in June of this year. So it coming out in Master Duel in just 2 months is kind of crazy, right? It's probably one of the faster cards that got into Master Duel from TCG release. So usually it's like half a year. Cards that come out in TCG will come out in Master Duel, but for promos, right, they could come out sooner. Pot of Extravagance is getting hit from 3 to 2. This is another nerf for Fluanda Reese. It is a slight nerf to Labyrinth and Eldritch, and there's not really too much to say about this. It's a great card. It's basically Pot of Greed for anyone that doesn't care about the extra deck. I think this is fine. It's not a big deal, one way or another. More hate for the birds, yeah. Alright, next thing to talk about is Luster Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. So it's going to go from 1 to 2. I guess this is great for Draco Slayers. It's probably one of their better starter cards. Yeah, destroy card, add a card from deck to hand. I don't know exactly what this does or what the implications are, but I guess it's a Draco Slayer starter card, and I guess good for Draco Slayer. Nadir Servant is getting unlimited from 2 to 3. This card is nuts. I think in Master Duel launch this was a limited card, and now it's finally going to be fully unlimited. Despia, Dogmatica, and Dogmatica, Nadir Servant is played at its max copies because it's such a huge consistency card. They get to add a Dogmatica monster and send one from the extra deck to the graveyard. You could send Garura with this. You could send Nits with this. You can send a lot of cards, and Nits pops a card, Garura draws you a card. There's a lot of things you could do with Nadir Servant, and it's kind of crazy seeing it go to unlimited. But at the same time, I don't really think Despia Dogmatica or Dogmatica is going to be that crazy. Alright, Ancient Fairy Dragon. Ancient Fairy Dragon is getting unlimited from 1 to 3. I don't really have a lot to say about this. It is what it is. I don't know what it does, and that's probably why it's getting unlimited. Moving on. Gersu, the Orcust. Gersu, the Orcust Mech Knight. This is another unban for Orcust. I think they're slowly trying to put Orcust not back into meta. I feel like Orcust is probably a little maybe too slow by today's standard. I don't really know. I'm not an expert on Orcust, but Orcust has been slowly getting unbanned and like unlifted, if that makes sense, right? And great. That's great for Orcust players. There's not that much representation, so it's nice to see that they probably get one of their better starters, you know, unlimited finally. So yeah, one thing I want to talk about before we stop this recording, right, is what didn't get hit, right? What didn't get hit, because that's important, right? Notably, what did not get hit at all was Dragon Link, right? Lubellion is still broken, right? With Bestial regained, right? With all the Dragon Link stuff. Dragon Link did not get hit whatsoever, and it's one of the better decks in this format. It's one of the more consistent ones, and it pops off. It has so many extenders. It has a lot going for it, and now you're going to see a lot. You're going to see a lot because Tearlaments got hit, Sprites got hit, the top tier as a whole got hit, except Dragon Link. So that's ridiculous. It's gonna mean you're gonna see a lot more Dragon Link decks, and personally I think that sucks. I don't like seeing Dragon Link. They combo for so long, their turns take so long, and it's just I don't like watching my opponent cuck me out of an experience, you know? I don't like watching my opponent play solitaire, and that's basically what this banlist is going to do because they're leaving Dragon Link untouched. So it's probably the best deck after the banlist. Yeah. So you're going to have to put a lot more counters for this deck. So another thing that did not get hit, Kashtira. Kashtira did not get hit whatsoever. And I see a lot of sentiment in my chat that, oh, Kashtira is not that great right now because they don't have a Rise Heart. And relatively speaking, you're right. Kashtira is not that great because they don't have a Rise Heart when you compare it to TCG. But in the context of Master Duel, Fenrir is still like a ridiculous card. Add 1 every turn and banishes something face down when they activate a monster effect. Unicorn taking out a monster from the extra deck. Birth being absolutely like one of the best recovery cards on top there with Bestial Regained. Shangri-Era being ridiculous as well. Just continually gaining them advantage if it's not dealt with and it can't be destroyed. Kashtira is still pretty good, in my opinion, right? It's not the top deck, but the road is paved now. Kashtira was released in the newest pack, so it's obvious Kashtira wouldn't get hit, but still, as much as like people like to say they're not that strong, you're gonna see a lot of them because they're already like so numerous in ladder right now. It would be really cool if they did get rid of Diablosis, but they don't want to because they want people to play Kashtira. It's kind of bullshit that they know how toxic Diablosis is because they banned it in TCG, and I think in OCG, I'm pretty sure it's banned. So they know how toxic this card is, but they're not gonna hit it in order to sell the selection packs. It's not like archetypes haven't got pre-hit before in the past, so I still kind of expected some sort of hit to come to Kashtira, but they just didn't. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll see a Rise Heart get limited on release or something. We'll see. But even then, I think Kashtira will be ridiculous. Those are my thoughts. I think Dragon Link and Kashtira, their way is sort of paved now, and now you're going to see a lot of Dragon Link and Kashtira. Tearlaments are dead. Sprite got a micro hit, but it's still very playable. And yeah, this ban list is huge. It is absolutely huge. It is probably the most destructive, the most impactful ban list we've had in a while. So I'm excited to see what the meta is going to look like for the season of September. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this type of content, and I'll see you on the next one.